when I first want to start is I also have Cameron with me. Here, I'll show you. And he's here for my backup because I forget things all the time. But the first thing I have to say is as a wildlife rehabilitator, you have to get the backing system that you have to have. So whether you're working with mammals and it's Division of Wildlife, or you're working with all wildlife, the birds and everything, you need to have contact within U.S. Fish and Wildlife. You have to have the contacts within Division of Wildlife, because as a wildlife rehabilitator, you know wildlife doesn't happen 9 to 5. So outside of that realm, you have to have the contacts with people that can either get a hold of people that you need, because these things that happen on a Saturday afternoon and nobody's on, you know, your wildlife officer's off, the other wildlife officers are off. You have to have that backing to be able to get a hold of people. Now, I'm going to share my screen, I hope. Share screen. Okay. Sorry, guys. It's going to take me a second to get used to all this. A couple of the first cases that we had were, we were called on a crow that was hit by a car. And when we arrived to the park that it was at, we found a crow. And unfortunately, it had passed. And so, of course, we picked the crow up. We'll take care of it. But as we were picking up the first crow and we were driving out of the park, we noticed that there was another dead crow. And as we were picking up that one, we noticed in the middle of a baseball field where kids play was another dead crow. So as we continued through this park, we were finding multiple cases of dead crows. This was a Saturday evening. Of course, most wildlife officers are off. So we were lucky enough to get a hold of one of the wildlife officers that we work with all the time. And he was off, but he got permission to come on and come all the way up into Trumbull County. This whole thing took us about 3 days to deal with, to try and figure out how all the crows died, going through autopsies, going through everything. And what we had noticed is all the crows had corn that they had recently eaten. So I was talking to Lori at the time, and I'm driving around and I'm looking and I can't figure it out. And we come past a corn pile. And we were pretty sure at that point that they had all been poisoned. And we had later heard that they were trying to kill the squirrels that were there because there was too many squirrels in the park. So, if we didn't have the backing of Division of Wildlife to help us to get through all of that, at that point, whenever you have a mass kill-off like that, they have to take pictures, they have to do everything, or it's never going to hold up in the court of law or anything else. And that's what those guys are there for, is for the legal aspect of when you have a poisoning case or anything else, that you have that backing system behind you for them to tell you exactly how to do it or what you need to do, and they'll walk you through it. I've been very lucky in the 30 years that I've made a lot of friends that I can call up real quick and just say, hey, what do I do? So I have been very lucky with that. The other case that we had with a kill-off, and I don't have any pictures, and I'm sorry, that's just more of the crows, was a kill-off. We, in a 2-week period, 2 years ago, we got 167 dead birds coming in. They were living about 24 hours, and we were going absolutely insane trying to figure out. Most were red-tailed hawks. Some were barred owls, red shoulders, just a couple here and there. So luckily we got a hold of U.S. Fish and Wildlife, And again, I want to thank Lori for being my support system and Kristen back, because that was a real hard time for us to go through. But through working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the important thing to do is when you have that many animals coming in at one time, obviously you know something's wrong. We do a 20 county area that we take care of, so our birds were all over the place. But we made quick notes of where every single bird came from. We did a map. And what we started to notice was that every single bird was around a farm field. So when we started to drive to get some of the birds that literally were falling out of the sky, we had noticed that we kept driving past soybean fields. So we started researching the soybean fields, and we had heard through the grapevine that they had been using specific chemicals. So through most of the research that we had done, we narrowed it down to those specific, the chemical that they were using on the soybean fields. So I think when all of this happens, as a wildlife rehabilitator, you're going to be the one that is going to have the boots on the ground. You're going to do the work. You're going to do the research, because these wildlife officers, there's one per county. They're not going to have the time. They're dealing with people, poaching and fishing and everything else. So you're going to have to be the one to be the mouth and the loud mouth for these wild animals where something is wrong. And you're going to know something is wrong. I mean, it's obvious. When things start to not look right, you're going to have to be the one that goes out to stand up for them and find out what's going on. So what had happened with that was through U.S. Fish and Wildlife, they had been working with Division of Wildlife, and we got a system that was supposed to happen last year, but because of COVID, it had changed. But where leaf samples and soil samples and everything were going to start to be gathered to try and figure out what was killing all the animals. So when I agreed to do this program, this was all going on, and it was all kind of happening. So we haven't figured out exactly what has killed them yet, and I hope I never see it again, because 167 animals in 2 weeks that are dead and dying was pretty rough to deal with. So, and I also want everybody to know that you're not alone, and you need a support system with the other wildlife rehabilitators. You know, I'm lucky to talk to quite a few of them. And if you don't have a system, you can always count on Division of Wildlife. Talk to your main office, talk to the people there. When you have an issue, when you have a problem that's going on, pick up the phone and call them, because they're usually, all the other wildlife rehabilitators are calling them going, this is what I'm seeing and this is what's wrong. So we have to stick together for all of this to happen properly. Oh, and that's the corn bait pile that we had found on that. Lori, if there's questions, you can just chime in. It's not really going to bother me too much.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. I don't know if you're going to have any. And I'm rambling fast, I know.
That's fine. So far, no questions. If there's something, I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay, so this is an eagle that we had gotten in. We had got the pictures of the eagle at first, and luckily it was bird watchers that had seen it, because it was on a back road in the middle of nowhere by Mosquito Lake, that if the bird watchers weren't there, we weren't going to find this bird. Nobody would ever saw it. But we got a call on an eagle. The eagle was flying. So we weren't sure exactly where it was whenever we got there. We were searching, we were looking. And as we looked, we saw a deer carcass that somebody had dumped on the side of the road. They had shot it, and we were looking. And right on top of the deer carcass was this eagle. So we were able to capture the eagle. Immediately, I was sending pictures to everybody because this is something that I had never seen before. This, here it is again. It looked like it had pox to a certain extent. That's originally what I thought it was going to turn out to be. But once we got it, it was crawling with lice, which lice can do that, but usually the eagle is, or the bird itself is not going to be in as bad a shape as this one was. And so we started working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Division of Wildlife, and we were able to find out that this bird had a certain mite that is usually on budgies, which is from a domestic bird. So we're not 100% sure, and luckily we did not get any other cases of it. But without the help of Division of Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, my veterinarian, of course, because he's the one that found it, yeah, the mite, we probably would not have been able to figure out what was going on with this bird. And also, what had happened was the person had shot the deer, and as the eagle was eating on the deer, it was going through the open wound, of course. That's the easiest spot to get in, and it consumed lead. And unfortunately, as a wildlife rehabilitator, you always try to be spot on and you try and be perfect for the wildlife because that's what we're there for. We never even considered lead because the bird was in such bad shape to begin with that that just was not something that we considered. And unfortunately, the bird did end up dying from lead poisoning. But still, at the point, you know, everybody working together is what, you know, got this bird going. You're going to have the support of the community and the people and your bird watchers, because they're the ones that are out there all the time. We're home taking care of babies. We're home taking care of all our wildlife. So you have to have that community outreach, that people will call you and they'll let you know what's going on. Your bird watchers are out in the field all the time. They're walking around. So this is everybody working together to help our wildlife. And that's pretty much what this whole presentation was all about, was everybody working together. And it's not just Division of Wildlife. It's not just us. It's the public. It's everybody working together to help save our wildlife. I also brought one more. Where did I put it? Sorry. This was the last case that we had seen. This was a fawn. We got a phone call that a mother was hit by a car. The doe was killed, and the fawn was laying on the side of the road. And we obviously immediately said to bring the fawn in. We're licensed to take in deer. So people always pull into the driveway. It's in the front seat of their car and they're petting it and they're loving it because they love wildlife. And Cameron went out and grabbed the fawn like we always do, no big deal, and was moving it to where we would do the initial care. As he was holding it, the skin was coming off the fawn, and we knew something was horribly wrong. So we took the fawn in, we took it to the care area where we were going to begin to take care of it. The people left. And we noticed that, the fawn had purple feet all over it. So our initial response was that it was some type of chemical burns, something, because it was on all 4 feet. It was at the same height. So it was just something that we were like, this is a very unusual thing. I started making phone calls. I said, I don't know what it is. Cameron was cleaning up because I wasn't sure it wasn't a chemical, so he immediately went, took a shower, got clean clothes. We were putting clothes in the washer. Um, Here's another picture of the feet. So the next day after this had all happened, the fawn was euthanized because the skin, everything was just going horribly wrong. And I was in contact with Division of Wildlife, Lori specifically. I think I contacted you, Kristen, to see if you had ever seen it. And all of a sudden, Cameron starts getting a rash on his arm where he had been holding the fawn. So this is when I started to panic. We wrapped his arm, we did everything. We knew it probably came from this fawn. Was it poison ivy? Was it some type of chemical that was on the fawn? What was it that was going on? And I contacted Lori. Lori contacted, I think it was ODH, and they finally came to get the fawn. They were testing it. It was a very, very long 5 days of waiting for testing to come back, waiting for everything to happen to get it taken care of. I did happen to do a program at Mosquito Lake, and there was a infectious disease doctor there who was mine, and I happened to talk to him and ask him about it, and he had never seen anything like it before. So that was even more concerning for us, that we may be into something that we aren't quite sure what we're dealing with. Now, I'm going to blow this up because I always completely blow what the bacterial infection was that this fawn had. So there it is right there. Dermatophil, Phyllis, Congolenesis. Okay, I have never heard of this. It's mostly in cattle, sheep, and goats and horses. There are very, very, very few cases of humans getting this disease, which was a little bit more concerning to us. And so pretty much we had to do all the research to figure out how to treat it, what to do with it. Lori helped me with that also. And we were able to figure it all out, get him to the physician to be treated, to have it done. So that's a whole nother case of what it takes to work together to get something done. And I do want to tell you that it takes some prodding at times to get things done, and to be a loudmouth to get things done. I see Kristen shaking her head. She knows. So it you have to keep pushing along to try and get everything taken care of for the animals, and don't give up on trying to take care of them. It can get hard at times to do that, but it's all the backing system. It's all the working together to get this all done. These past few years, a lot of these cases have been showing up that are very unusual, that we have never even heard of. In 30 years that I've done it, I've never heard of it. I've never dealt with it. And if we didn't have the people to stand with us to do that, then we wouldn't be any more ahead today than we were back then. So we've seen a couple more cases of this happening in different areas. We think they're coming from some of the farmers around, that their animals actually have it. It's not very common in the United States for this to happen. But when I was putting together this presentation, I felt that there was a need for the wildlife rehabilitators to have a place to go to share what is going on in their community, and that if there was a place to say, right now I've been talking to Lori about it, we have quite a few birds dying, and we don't know why again. But, is it happening someplace else? We really don't have a place to go to communicate with each other. And I think that's something that, as wildlife rehabilitators, we need to work on a little bit. I will call Laura Jordan quite often and ask her if she's seen anything, or Lori will tell me Laura says she's not seeing anything that we are seeing here. But I think with cases like these, the off the wall diseases that we see, that everybody in the state of Ohio that does wildlife should know something about. So I think we should, in different countries also. Yeah, that they're seeing, because that is just something that I feel would be important for everybody to, sorry, I'm messing with my phone, to try and, there we go. Oh, sorry. To try and work out. And yes, Lori, I didn't take my 45 minutes.
What? You were supposed to. No,
I know, right? I figured there might be a little bit of questions because I see people typing.
Yeah, and I think you brought up several good points, Heather, and I think that was a good presentation. I think that, you know, what I get out of your presentation is communication is definitely key, and, you know, rehabbers communicating with each other and communicating with the Division of Wildlife, I think is definitely key to making everything work together. And you can see Jeff's comment on there that keep up the good communication with each other and with us. So that's how we learn things, and that's how you guys learn things as well. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, there's a lot of good comments. I don't see any current questions.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
It's Judith Vaughn. That fawn, was it by, or did they find it in an area where there's a lot of water? Like a lot of bodies of water, whether it's creeks, streams, because that disease actually is common in young animals, whether it's sheep, fawn, etc., with animals that are around water. And it is able to go to, it is actually zoonotic to humans when you handle the young that have the disease. So I was just curious where they found the fawn.
It was actually in a farm field with sheep.
Right.
They went to feed their sheep.
Right. Sheep can get it. I was just curious, were there bodies of water around where like on the farm? Like,
yeah, no, there was not.
Okay. Curious. And then, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, at least in my career, in my time working here with our agency, that is the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. So when Heather contacted me about it, I was not really sure what to think at that point, but luckily we were able to get it tested and figure out what was going on.
Yeah, sea turtles have an actual, a different strain of it that's actually a little bit more virulent. But luckily we don't have to worry about that here. And then also I just have one more question about, were they notified that the deer about the eagle case, were they notified that deer was actually dumped, or is that an assumption that the deer was dumped by a hunter?
It's an assumption, but they do it in this area quite often because it is on a back road. It's on a dirt road that when it rains, it floods. Very few people ever go back there. And what? There's a lot of dumping that is done in that area because they can do it without anybody ever seeing that they're there or doing anything.
So you're talking about the carcasses, because I don't know that. I am a hunter, and I also, obviously, converse with other hunters. I was just worried. I do know, like in Logan, Ohio, that there are some hunters that will dump the carcass remains, but not an actual full deer.
This was a full deer.
Hunter that would do that.
I agree with you. I do agree with you. I don't think that I said a hunter at any point in time. I don't think I just said that it was dumped.
Oh, Barbara thought she might have heard that it was. No, I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't think I said Hunter, and if I did, I did not mean to,
No.
because no, I don't know that.
Ouch. There went my finger. Okay, yeah, no, thank you for that clarification. I was just curious because I would definitely, if that were the case, I would definitely, we have a really good relationship as far as being wildlife rehabilitators and also working with hunters and the Division of Wildlife. And it would be something that I would impress upon fellow hunters. Hey, look, let's not do those. So, yeah, I just wanted to get some clarification. Thank you for that.
We've been seeing a lot more lead cases here with eagles and red tails. We're actually getting the machine to test because the cases have been growing exponentially in the last couple years. And a lot of what we're seeing is mostly because people shoot groundhogs. So that has been added to part of our education program to hunters, because we do a lot of hunting shows and everything else. And we talk with a lot of hunters that, they're fully aware that when they shoot the groundhog in the field and they let it lay, that these birds are going for easy food to eat it. So that has been part of our education for the last couple years. I don't know if it is for you, Lori, if the Division of Wildlife has touched on that at all.
No, unfortunately, I don't think so. And I don't know what's said in all the, the local programs that we do and stuff, but we also, the one thing, just thinking about the conversation here, sometimes you might see lead cases in geese, and sometimes you might see it with ospreys too that are feeding on fish from lead sinkers and things like that. So that is something that we do see pop up occasionally. And I was just going to mention here, if you see in the chat box, Jeff Westerfield had said that, as our agency, we work with the Southeastern Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study, and we also work with the National Wildlife Health Center on potential disease issues that start popping up in our area. So those are also great resources for rehabilitators. If you get time, he's included the links there in the chat. You can go to those websites and check them out. And then, so there are some comments, and then Stephanie says, are you seeing any lead in possums from where they eat carcasses? At least to my knowledge, I have not, but I don't know, maybe Heather, if you want to chime in on that.
I have not, Kristen. I don't know that we're doing enough testing right now, honestly, to see how much lead is in everything. That's why we're investing in the machine to get it here, to be able to test and test the species that we're not 100% sure that they even have it. I think there's a lot of, I've been talking to a lot of rehabilitators from other states that do have the lead testing machine, and they test almost every animal that walks through their facility. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do that with, 2,000-3,000 animals, because the testing is very expensive. But I'm interested to test outside of the raptor species to see exactly how much lead we're working with.
Okay, and then let's see here. Let me get caught up. And Manon says, sorry if this has been asked. I just joined in. Hello. Is there a talk about legislation about getting rid of lead? I have not heard anything on my end. I don't know if anybody has any other information on that, but yeah, it's not something
No, we haven't. I think the conversation has come up that they were concerned how much it's going to cross over into hunting, and cause issues with guns and everything else. I think that was the problem with taking on lead.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I will say, just from being a hunter myself, I do know, and I haven't been out looking or trying to buy any kind of ammunition lately, but I do know right now ammunition is very hard to find for people. So, you know, and I guess at least in my eyes, a hunter at this point may have to resort to using copper instead of lead, you know, things to that degree, which may help curb some of these situations. So.
I think the weather has a lot to do with, sorry, whoever I just cut off. I think the weather has a lot to do with the diseases that are popping up a lot more now also. Our winters are a lot warmer.
Yeah. I mean, we had some colder days this year, but yeah, I think you're right, Heather. Kristen and I've talked about this before. And even Fran, I always say, I wish we'd have really cold temperatures, have a really cold winter and knock out some of this stuff. But yeah, it does seem like when we have these warmer winters, we do have more diseases pop up. Tim, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, with the lead thing, I actually was talking to the division. I think I was talking to Randy and Matt about this, and also I called some gun stores and figured out that many of the hunters or sportsmen don't really know about the possibility to get something other than lead. And I guess when they do, they say that lead is cheaper to buy than copper or steel, and so there's also an assumption, there's no proof of it, but that it's not as accurate supposedly as lead would be. And so that's where I think that comes from. And I agree that I wish we wouldn't have lead because we wouldn't have these issues. But I think those are the two concerns from sportsmen, and maybe Judith can jump in, but I don't think anything is proven.
Yeah, and those are all things that I've heard as well.
Right.
All right, Heather, do you have any other things you want to comment on, or anybody have any questions?
Hopefully we just continue to work together. I think we need to work on either a website or something where wildlife rehabilitators can communicate to each other. I don't know if we could do that through Division of Wildlife, just through a small site, or OWRA can. But I just think that if we know what things are going on, because Lori, you and I both know there's things going on all the time, all over the place. And you're usually my main contact to say, hey, I'm seeing, you know, I got 10 birds this week and they're all dead. And I know Tim had a lot of deaths this year. And I think if we get together in one spot that people can just visit to say, hey, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a little bit better for communication that way.
Yeah, and
Stephanie did point out that there's a private Ohio Rehabilitator Facebook group. If you text her, you can be added.
Okay.
And for OWRA, on our website, we do have a chat, and you can set that up individually in your settings so that if someone does post a comment in the OWRA chat on the website, it will be emailed to you. So you will have access to it that way, so that, you know, it takes a little, it's a little more, not as instant as Facebook, but it is another way to communicate if you want to take advantage of that.
Do you have to be a member to be in that, Kristen?
For the chat, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes. Which you are.
I know.
Okay, so
thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Heather, so much.